This is Carl Moore talking management for the Globe and Mail. Today I'm talking to Susie Arioli, who's a jazz musician and a band leader here in Montreal and performed recently at the Montreal Jazz Festival. Good afternoon, Susie.
Good afternoon.
So, Susie, for managers, we need more creativity, more innovation, the stuff that we think that jazz bands have in spades. When you look at jazz, how important is creativity to the jazz process?
Well, speaking for myself, I enjoy creating, and I enjoy a lot of the thing about the music that I enjoy is a lot of communion with the people that I'm performing for. So that's a huge part of it. Musically, I try to stay really within, well, I think the mentality of our band is to stay really within a very tight flower pot, and to have such a small little area in which to be creative. It forces us to get closer and closer to the truth in a way, and it causes us to re-examine what we already do, and we do a lot of. So there's a lot of repetition and a lot of milking the same thing and seeing what we can get out of that within a really tight parameter, see how creative we can be within that. And that makes me feel very satisfied to not veer off in other directions, but within a very small parameter. It's kind of like I really enjoy working in that way.
So what are the parameters and who sets those parameters?
One of the parameters is the drum sound, basically. I accompany the band with my snare, a very rough sound with my brushes, metal brushes. And that gives me a huge control over the dynamics of our band. We can get incredibly quiet, but we can still get really loud, and I am completely control of that all the time. I have a sense of rhythm, so it's a natural thing for me to play the drums. I used to play my thigh, so it's a natural extension of me to very casually play, and I get a lot of feeling out of it. So I get to control the volume and the sound. There's like emotional sounds that come with jazz, like for me, which kind of date jazz. One of them is the ride cymbal. Okay. So not having that in the mix lets me control also the emotion of what I'm doing also, and not having somebody in the band who has to carry a whole lot of equipment and has to be kind of a slave in a way, in that they always just have to take care of all their equipment, and not having all that stuff. It's not in the band, so there's a much more easy dynamic. You know, the bass player does have to carry his contrebass, but it's not a huge thing. We don't have lots and lots of equipment, so we're not oppressed by our tools, and it makes us feel really light and constantly available for any creativity that will happen, because we're not burdened by a technical morass. You know, we're just working on the music and the connection with people.
So it's a sense of simplicity is what you bring to it. One of the things that business is looking at is this idea that we need to be more authentic, that to be a good leader, good manager, there's a sense that the authentic you know, a few rough edges we want to kind of slide off, but we need to have authenticity. Sounds like that's a big part of what you are on stage, is the authentic Susie is there. How do you get to be authentic like that?
I had some pretty good advice. When I was starting to perform, I got cocky and decided, okay, I'm done with this jam night thing where I do a couple of tunes. I'm going to put a show on and invite people to come. But at that point, I was still undeveloped as a singer, in that I didn't know what authenticity really meant, really. I mean, I had natural instinct to just be myself, but one of the things I was doing is, because one of my hugest role models is Billie Holiday, I got a lot of material from her. I enjoy the foxtrot. I enjoy that rhythm at the time. That was what I was concentrating on. But I was singing like her. I wasn't sounding like a white Canadian, speaks a little French woman. I was a girl at the time. Okay. I was sounded like I was assuming a role of a Deep South black singer. Yeah. And I wasn't conscious of it. I mean, once I was like shocked into realizing that, I also asked myself that, why am I doing that? And that's just a habit. I think it's just a habit, and plus it might be, we believe the hype sometimes that you have to have a certain, this label has to be precisely that. If you're a woman, you have to be like that. If you're you know what I mean? All these roles that we have to play. And I realized that it was, because I like to take the closest, the easiest route to where I'm going. I like to use the least amount of effort so that I mean, that's what we all want to do. You start off really chunky, and then you realize, it just takes that little bit of muscle, and I can relax and think about other stuff while I'm doing it. So the singing, I realized that if I would just stay true to who I was and didn't put on any artifice, it would be very easy and emotionally fulfilling, and it would be very natural to do. And I would sound just like me. I wouldn't have to fight for some identity. Who does she sound like? What's she trying to do? Or any of those silly questions that might come into your head. And I think people respond to people just being what they are. And personally, I am attracted to that. Like a restaurant that runs out of fish because it's late. I like that. I like that they're not buying in bulk and keeping it and serving old fish. You know what I mean? They're being authentic to, we serve fresh food. You don't like it? Go to the place that serves stale food. Well, okay, you've got me as a devoted fan. And that's kind of, I mean, it's not so, aggressive for my music thing, but I kind of like the fact that I just do what I do, and it's available to everybody, and if you like to listen to it, that's fine. I'm certainly not going to put on an act to sell it. Somebody else can do that.
So it strikes me the kind of parallel of management is that we have mentors when we're young that we look to, and then when we're older we have mentors. And like you had Billie Holiday, we might have a manager or a leader that we try to be like. And there's a certain growth in doing that, but at a certain point you got to break away and become yourself and give up kind of the mentor in terms of following them too religiously and become your own person. Yeah. That's effectively what you did as well. So it's kind of limits of where you're allowed to go, where you're allowed to play.
Yeah, and within those limits it's really fun. I find it really fun to play around.
So it sounds actually having limits, which we have in any organization, you don't see as some huge terrible constraint, is that it gives you a sense of freedom.
You said it. I find that it definitely does, because I'm like a cat, constantly moving into a new neighborhood or a new house. It's freaky. You got to figure out your boundaries again and where the nice light is and, oh my God, where the draft is. And you have to worry about all this stuff. So when you know where you are, that makes me very relaxed. I know what's happening. I know how to do it. And I know the different colors. The more I'm there, the more depth I can see and the more colors I can use. I like it that it's organic. It's moving. When I'm like, my dad, bless his soul, was a wonderful man, really a sweetie pie. One of the worst bits of advice he ever gave me was in the way when I was kind of like scratching my head looking for direction, he would say, the world's your oyster, honey, And he was such a generous, beautiful man. He thought he was doing me this favor. It petrified me, Okay. I was afraid, like, yeah, there's 1,000 things I might be able to do, and it gave me the jitters, like, I don't know, a little restraint, I think, a little limitation, it can help, because then you were born of a mathematician, you're going to be a mathematician, and so are your children. I don't mean that, but that kind of like a little control, a little bit of a leash, a little restraint, a little. And now I apply my own leash, and I know what's going on, and I like that subtlety that I can give things, and I like not bursting out and doing something, that I have to be embarrassed about. You know what I mean? I got my pride, so I do like those limits.
So I think in business we have limits, and lots of times we see as constraints, but it gives you kind of a sense of freedom, a sense of where I'm going to play, who my customers are, how I'm going to approach them, what my competitive advantage is actually a sense of confidence and a sense of direction and vision as opposed to being artificial constraints.
I think so.
Okay. This is Carl Moore talking management for the Globe and Mail. Today I've been speaking to Susie Arioli, a jazz musician, about the nature of things like innovation and creativity.